If you've been studying ancient cultures like I have for a good long while now, you start to find now that there's some hot spots in the world that you really want to look at. But then again, as we dig farther and farther, it spreads out like crazy. But all along, everybody's been hooked on Egypt. And even whenever I was a kid, they thought it was the oldest possible civilization. And then they saw some ziggurats, but they didn't put two and two together over in Sumeria. And then now they got up under the ruins of a city and found out there was a city below that. That had been buried, like a tell situation where it had been destroyed and then built on top of, like just left it as a foundation and continued. And after digging into that, I mean, it goes back to way before Egypt. Egypt gets to in the 34 to 3600 range, and you're way pre-dynastic at that time, and it was separated, not even considered as one entity. It was an upper and a lower people that were separated totally from each other, but yet still together as a people. But by separated, I mean something like the United States was originally. You had the northern colonies, and then the big southern states that had all the food production and everything into them. Okay, that's very similar to Egypt, where you had food production mainly down in the lower Nile, which is northern, but farther down the Nile or closer to the Mediterranean is lower, and upper is up into the higher elevation. So on a map it seems backwards, but um, that's where the main food production was. And it's believed that even just like with the same reason for America binding into one, uh, rather than having people have a monopoly on the food of the situation and the other people having the bureaucracy, they needed to put that together. And the Egyptian people needed to put that together too. And the one that is said to have been done it was King Narmer or Menes. And if you look it up, there's a few different pictures of him. One looks like a big expanded face, so the guy almost looks like Mike Tyson. In fact, they always use pictures of him, but they even have to spread Mike Tyson's face a little bit to get it to even look like it. And I think it's just a bad representation, and no one can actually prove whether or not that is King Menes, because he's wearing a bonneted hat, which would look like he would be somebody else, maybe a priest, maybe this, maybe that, but it's not a kingly hat for North or South, Upper or Lower Egypt. So it doesn't make quite a full cognitive sense, but and they don't have an attachment to that other statue. There's a few other statues too, and one that they have that they've developed out here that they had found. I mean, it looks so European. It's just he's wearing all the regalia, but it almost would look like something you would see from the Ptolemaic era for sure, if anywhere you would think in the Egyptians thing. But yet they say that is one of the statues of him, and so that's an oddity too, because now you're getting a lot of different looks. Well, here's another extreme oddity, and this one actually hooks up Egypt with Sumeria. Now, people have known for a long time now, once we got into genetics, that they started looking at the plants and grains that they had there. And some people started looking at corn and all kinds of grains around the world. And they realized that a lot of the wheat and barley production that came out of the world came from Egypt, but that Egypt's matched what goes on in Sumeria. And when you go up into the plains there, they have natural barley that grows, but it's genetically different. It's been modified, humanly modified. Like corn didn't used to look like corn, wheat wasn't as productive, barley, so on like that. They ended up being able to genetically modify these, like you have changed dog breeds over time, and like people breeds ourselves have changed over time. Well, this statue here is just a sketch, but I'll show you the original picture in a second. This is just a sketch of King Menes, and his name was Menes Tusu. Now, it comes from Susa in Elam. Now, there's been a lot of correlations with Tusu. Now, they know Menes and Menes, that's the same word. But what does Tusu mean? And there's been a lot of conjecture. I've seen a lot of things, so I'll add a couple of them in here. Susa used to be called Tusa. There, that's that easy. Well, Tusu in Sumerian would almost be like water ground or waterland. And so you wonder if they were talking about the Nile area, and that could be, that he's Manus of the Nile area and things, and that Tusu would have been a Sumerian explanation of it, definitely denoting that it's not in Ur and all of those areas. But so this is a picture from like 1907 that somebody did a sketch of after they had found the thing whenever they had dug into the tells there, which a tell is a mound, a giant earth mound. And what we're finding nowadays, people, is that when you dig into these mounds, you may hit a group right at the top of it and you think, oh, they lived on this little mound. No, you dig on through it and they used to live there for a long time, and they built up the mound by their existence on those mounds. And there's a lot of, and they're usually a flattened, long, low sloping mound area. But then there's burial mounds. Now, burial mounds are gigantic, in proportion, and a lot more bulbous. And we have found a lot of neat things in those too. Like, well, for one thing, the Temple of the Moon just looked like a giant burial mound until they got into it, found the stone, and said, wow, it looks kind of pyramidic, and then dug the thing out. I've done a video out on here recently. Let's take another look here at the actual real statue here. And one thing I want you to note is right here, he's got this piece stuck to his chest, right? This is not the common Egyptian look at all, in any way, shape, or form. His beard is not even just the chin beard, but it is the Sumerian beard. His eyes are inset with the lapis lazuli like the Egyptians are. That's been a little more stylized, but in the exact same way, using lapis lazuli. And ironically, they've tested most of the lapis lazuli that comes from Egypt comes from over here. So they have a long-standing stature together for a long time. And there's a folklore tale that actually might have more truth in it than most things that we know. A folklore tale said that the Sumerian area had flooded out real bad in olden times when Enki and Enlil had gotten into a fight, and that God had said that it wasn't going to rain, that he wouldn't flood the earth again, which sounds very familiar to the Bible tale. He didn't make a rainbow happen or anything like that, but I think we all know rainbows were probably existing before then through water vapor. But anyhow, he said it wouldn't happen again, and then it did. And wherever it did, it's possible that it scattered a lot of people out, and it ruined all the major cities through there, and it caused a major diaspora that happened perhaps 700 years before Menes even happened. And they found the Nile, had gone up it, back and forth, and then it split into two groups, and then those two groups grew up and then became a giant faction. That giant faction conglomerated into one and became Egypt. But until that time, it had been separated into two, a lower and an upper. But the farmers were not the Egyptians. The first farmers were up into the plains of Anatolia, all the way up through the Caucasus Mountains and bound back into the Sumerian lands. So an arc happens here going down and hitting Egypt and off the edge of the Mediterranean, and then the arc goes around over through all these mountains and Mount Ararat and where Göbekli Tepe is and things like that date at 10,500 years ago, down into Sumeria. Now the ancient Sumerian tales talk about the lords of Arata, and it's where they supposedly originally came from before they came down and settled the cities in the valley, and that seems to fit with it all real well. Now this is the actual statue here that's at the museum, at the Louvre. And you can see the rippling beard effect that they have, the shoulder stature separated at the armpit, everything. This piece that's just sticking out looks like he's got a little square book or something attached to his tummy. Is actually, he's got one hand folded over another. Both his hands are in front of himself in a, not a praying position that we think of, but a clasped position. And I'll show you that here in a minute too, but I want you to show you that even here in what it has left, one of the eyes still has the lapis lazuli inlay, the white alabaster, and then the blue inset eye that's there. The other side, it's fallen out or something had happened, and you can tell this is what was really taking the damage, and this didn't take any damage. So it was the way that the statue had been laying, and this was found under a wall, crushed under down through the tail, under, it had been buried under a wall, so that's the reason no one had ever found it. Through all the times and people perhaps coming back and redoing it, they used that flattened wall on the ground somewhat as a foundation for what they built on top of it. Like what had happened in Sumer and a few places that we've already archaeologically looked at. So I want you to remember the way this guy looks here, right? And remember, it's not the little singular beard. This is a Sumerian look. But now let's go look at the Sumerians here real quick. So what I want to note to you is, if you'll look at this, that is the same style, the same configuration, the same beard. It's got two more ripples in it. His hair is curly, done over, the whole 9 yards. It's the exact same inset pattern. Now this has a brow ridge set into it, nice eyebrow sets. A lot of Caucasians have thick eyebrow sets, and I went through Greece where they get real bad. But it's a blue inset eye in alabaster inside of a ring of lapis lazuli. And you can tell they even stained it and rubbed it off, and it still has that effect, that antiquing effect that they did originally onto it. And this is out of a special type of stone where it has a marbling effect. It's pretty nice. It's a nice little object. This is Sumerian Priest. Now you see where the hands are. You see how one hand is clasped over the other. If you just cut that off right here, and you cut that off right here at the wrist, and break his arms off, this is that same statue. I tried to show this in a video that I did here almost, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and I couldn't find the secondary picture, the one that I started with during the video. If you've watched it, you've seen it, but here it is, and here's your connection for him. And it's not anything that's out of the ordinary, this statue either. It's what really keyed me onto it. After knowing so much about the Sumerians, I go, well, that's not even Egyptian, that's a Sumerian priest. And they go, it's from Elam. And I wanted to get on the site and go, dude, y'all aren't even got the right picture for your, thing that you're doing or whatever. And lo and behold, no, it was a whole article on the fact that that's the way it was. And so when you look at these statues, you can see that they have this common appearance here. And I want to show you this. Now that is just a little bit earlier in time than the other one. And isn't this unique that he has the same beard? He still has 2 more lines in his beard than the other guy does. I don't know if lines in your beard mean anything, but they were farther apart ripples. More, loose than curly, I guess, if you would say. And this eye was messed up on the other one. Now it's this one on that, but tell me that's not the same Narmer guy, right? Well, it's not Narmer. This is a Sumerian priest. In fact, that's what I've Googled here, is Sumerian priests. And you look at all these, and they, you get to even older times, and they start to have these sheep wool things around them as the waist environment. And sure enough, they have that same lapis lazuli inset eye. It's real common for the Egyptians too. Now this is alabaster. He has a smaller beard. Again, these people used to shave their head real close, and then they had ceremonial wigs they would put on. Seems like that's something that goes on from here through Egypt, where they always have ceremonial wigs because they have a lice problem. Now that lice problem comes with cattle. And so the cattle that come in originally into Egypt come from here, and they've actually genetically found out that Botaurus, I believe is the Latin genus, that comes from here and up into Asia. And it's a type of water buffalo, but not like the African water buffalo at all. And that it comes from here. And whenever you see the ancient goddess Hathor, she is one of these cows. Later they have an Apis bull. All of those are this Botaurus that comes from Sumerians, along with the grain that all traces back to here with irrigation techniques, farming, domestication of cattle, having a plow, and a few other objects. They seem to be the first initial place we find of it. And if you've ever studied Sumeria, the neat thing about it is it seems to come out of nowhere. It just takes off, poof. And of course that's given rise to all kinds of beliefs, and Zacharias Sitchin came out with the gods, and I've delved into that real hard, and sure enough, these people do believe their gods came from the sky, and they don't take credit for anything. They say the gods came down and gave them the plow, the gods came down and did this, that Enki himself came and laid all this stuff out, and they had sacred things that they were giving called me's that had all these pretty much probably mathematical problems and formulas on it, and that they had lost them at one time and it lost their information. Now, that could have been during the first Akkadian conquest or something that happens that's not written down. Quite often, whenever you have a disruption like that, it will not be written down because the writing was disrupted. No one's doing it anymore. So, anyhow, here's your common ground right here with Menez, and who's Narmer, and the original guys and these priest kings. And there's a good one too right there, because that is about the same thing too. It doesn't have any lapis lazuli inset. I don't think this one ever did. That almost looks like a fake or something. Or it's been rubbed down real bad, like somebody physically rubbed on it or something. Where is that from? That's oh, it says Frank's Sumerian statues. Okay, so that makes sense. Well, let's look at one that's not fake. Bam. There you go. Bam. More of a close-up on him. And hopefully you can really see right there whenever we get a good look at it that that's that hand position. There's that square that's left of his two hands. Again, this guy's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He has 3 more. Ooh, boy, that's the beard man right there. It could be that when the statue is made, that each one of these bands means a year of something, but I think it's just really stylistic. I mean, I've tried to see if I find a king that only lasted a short time. Did he have a short beard, or was that just because he was young, because he wasn't old, because he didn't grow it out? Is this even a real beard? Are they fake beards? Are they, chin wigs, type of thing? Because a lot of the people in Egypt wore fake little chin wigs, and there was even a woman pharaoh that, to make sure everybody was appeased, wore a little chin beard thing that was strapped on. In fact, the other picture of Narmer that you find that I was telling you earlier that looks so European, has his chin wig strapped on. And so apparently, if that is the fact, then this would have been something that went on from a long, long time before. And what does that have to do with, a hill of beans? But here's a Sumerian connection, in fact, quite a few, that shows you that Egypt had kind of come from Sumeria somewhere around 5200 to about 7000 BC, somewhere right in there. And it took them a while to infiltrate it, get everything going on. And the problem with Egypt really is it's half buried up under sand, and so you never really know what's up under you. If you have a whole pile of sand, now they've taken and gotten up in the air and used LiDAR and things like that, and they end up being able to see some shapes, and they go, hey, and then they can go investigate it. And hopefully in this new age, we'll have a lot more investigation. There's a lot of kids going to school learning to be archaeologists, and they want to find something new and things new and exciting things, rather than just having a handful of people that you allow to do this. They need to have groups that are overseen by those people, and see if we can't check some stuff out. That burial mounds all the way up through Europe and Turkey and Göbekli Tepe area, Caucasus Mountains, there's giant burial mounds there. Let's dig into a few of those. Some of those look like giant pyramids. Let's dig into one and see what it's got into it. It's a burial mound. Yeah, it is. And we want to find out the history of the world, and so we're going to, honor this man or this woman or whatever goes on in here to that fact, and they would, I'm sure, if they were in heaven or whatever goes on or alive today and go, this was going to happen 8,000 years later, they'd be go, sure. So people know, how everything happened and what happened to us. I'd agree. Wouldn't you agree? Sure, I'd agree. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. We'll have another one coming out soon. Peace.